Okay, it's time to get started with our next debate. Please join me in welcoming Republican candidates for the Knox County Common Pleas Court judge seat. Noel Alden on our left, and that was totally wrong.
My left even.
Noel Alden is on the right, and Richard Wetzel is on the left. We're gonna, thank you. We'll start with opening statements with Mr. Alden. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Mount Vernon News, Knox, Pages, and WMVO for inviting us here and helping us educate the voters. It's an exciting night. We heard some wonderful candidates earlier. In preparation for this debate tonight, I reflected on everything that's happened in our community since I decided to run. There's been some really exciting and very happy things that happened for some of the people that I know and love. Danville football team, what a wonderful season. Senior night, when my wife and I were able to escort my son for the last time onto the football field. Danville's mock trial team making it to states next week, and I've got some of those kids are here watching tonight, which is very cool. We've got, my wife had that accident and her amazing, miraculous recovery from her automobile accident. We've also had some incredibly sad moments for our community, people I also know and love, that unfortunately hit the national news. But through it all, the highs, the lows, the citizens of this county stuck together. They helped each other. That's what we do. That, ladies and gentlemen, is something I never experienced anyplace else I've ever lived. That is why I'm running for Common Pleas Court judge. I am truly grateful for the many blessings living here, working here, raising my family here has bestowed on me and my wife. I've worked hard to give back to the community, but I want to do more. I am honored and humbled by all the support I've gotten from the community. And I pledge that I will be the hardest working, the fairest, and most considerate judge I can be if you elect me the next Knox County Common Pleas Court judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wetzel.
Thank you. Thank you to our hosts and to all of you for attending this important event this evening. My name is Richard Wetzel, and I'm the endorsed Republican candidate for Common Pleas judge, and I'm here with Diana, my wife of 33 years. My profession is my calling. I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 15. Over the past 15 years of working with people in Knox County and volunteering my time and services to local organizations, I've fell in love with this county, and when Diana and I had the opportunity to move here 3 years ago, we got an opportunity to get more involved in the community. I want to give back to the community that has given so much to me. I have a vision for the role of the court in the community to take back our neighborhoods from the ravages of drugs. I'm answering a call to action. During my 15 years of working in Knox County, I've witnessed the dramatic increase in drug-related crimes and our law-abiding citizens being brutalized by drug users who will do anything to get their drugs. I have 33 years of proven experience in the courtrooms around the state of Ohio at the state and federal level in 17 different counties. I'm also special counsel to the Ohio Attorney General, Mike DeWine. I've had hundreds of cases around the state, including 16 civil and felony criminal trials before judges and juries, as well as arguments in the Ohio Supreme Court, the U.S. District Court, the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, and the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. We have a drug epidemic in Ohio which is infecting our young people and depleting our productive workforce. My extensive courtroom experience around the state will be necessary to effectively administer justice in the court and to provide protection for the public. We need to drive out the drug pushers, help the victims of crime, protect the vulnerable, and assure the safety of the public.
Thank you. Our first question tonight, and we'll start with Mr. Wetzel. Can you please describe for me your experiences in a common pleas courtroom in the last year?
In the last year, I've had common pleas court experience in other counties around the state. I've had cases in Monroe County in oil and gas rights. I've had cases in Cleveland in foreclosure cases. I've had cases in Delaware County in custody cases in the past year. That would describe it.
Thank you. Mr. Alden.
Thank you. My cases, I've handled a myriad of cases in the last year. I've handled a felony case in Delaware County. I've handled several felony cases here in Knox County. Microphone's yelling at me. I've had extensive experience here in Knox County. I can't tell you exactly how many cases I've had filed in Knox County over the last year, but I've handled over about 500 cases since I've been here in Knox County just in the Common Pleas Court. So if we prorate that, it's been a considerable number of cases in the last year. I've handled divorces, dissolutions, civil stalking protective orders just in the last year. Also handled extensive amount of probate court work in the Common Pleas Court, the probate juvenile division, but my focus has always been on the Common Pleas Court here in Knox County. I've also had a custody case in Franklin County and in Licking County. I'm not sure if both of them were in the last year, but within the last year and a half or so. So I've got extensive experience in the courtroom. That's what I do every day. I prepare to go in the courtroom, we do filings in the court. But my caseload has certainly been not exclusive to Knox County, but it's absolutely been focused in Knox County. It's the community that I practice in. One of the senior partners in my firm, when I first got to Knox County, said every time you cross the county line, you're costing your client money and you're wasting your time. So try to stay close to home.
Thank you. Any rebuttal, Mr. Wetzel?
I think it's a little misleading for Mr. Alden to refer to some of his experience in Knox County. I checked all the court records in Knox County, printed the court docket from the clerk's office, and about half of Mr. Alden's cases in Knox County have been the simplest form of case where it's protecting a lien. Nearly all of those cases have been for the same client, the Apple Valley Property Owners Association, where Mr. Alden filed very simple paperwork in each case, the same thing over and over. In Knox County, there have been 36 jury trials in the past 9 years, and none of them involved Mr. Alden. In my 33 years of law practice, I've had 16 trials before both judges and juries all around the state, and the common pleas courts around the state and at the federal level. I've had arguments in the Ohio Supreme Court, the U.S. District Court, the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. I've got extensive courtroom experience. Thank you.
Mr. Alden, any rebuttal?
Yes, please. I am very proud of my work with Apple Valley Property Owners Association. I do extensive amount of work for them. I understand Mr. Wetzel would like to discredit the work that I do. Even if you take away those 250 or thereabouts from for Apple Valley, I still have 250 cases more in Knox County than Mr. Wetzel does. Also, he said I didn't have any jury trials here in Knox County in the next 9 years. Interestingly enough, nor does he. So we are in the same boat there. But what I've done is I practice here in Knox County. And I'm very proud of my clients. I don't have any problem with that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Wetzel, can you comment on something that you've spoken about tonight and throughout the campaign, that if elected, you would like the Common Pleas Court to collaborate with social service agencies like Starting Point, New Directions, and United Way? How will this collaboration be used specifically in cases of those charged with, violent crimes, rape, murder, etc.? And then, Mr. Alden, what is your position on such a collaboration? And we're starting this time with Mr. Alden.
Sure. Collaboration is incredibly important. We are a small county. We have to work together. Judge Thatcher has done a marvelous job of getting a drug court initiated in municipal court. We've actually researched, I've had John on the radio with me in the Legal Eagle program, and we've talked about it extensively. There are numerous counties, some of the smaller counties actually do, the collaboration they have is the Common Pleas Court and the municipal court work together through the drug court. So you don't have the duplication of resources. You've got everyone that's focused in one place. The neat thing that Judge Thatcher is doing is he's bringing in those community groups to really make a difference so we can stop the recidivism, which is the key to being a good judge, is how do we keep people from coming back and seeing us? We want them to be one-stop shoppers. We want them there and then gone, never to come back again. So the drug court, bringing in the community, we've got the Chamber of Commerce. We've talked to the Chamber of Commerce about providing jobs for these folks. We're looking for housing for those folks, because if you take someone who's got a drug problem, you go get them cleaned up, then you put them back in the same places they were, it doesn't work. They end up with the same friends, same groups, same dealers, same pushers, and they end up right back in the court again. So the collaboration, which is what you asked about, is critical, because we have to get all of our resources in one place, like John's working on in municipal court, and I think we can do that together with the Common Pleas Court and the municipal court. So it's a real exciting opportunity. Mound Builders and Freedom Center are already integrally part of the drug court, and they're going to continue to be so, because they can provide the services for the rehabilitation that's necessary and the drug testing.
Mr. Wetzel?
Thank you. I have a vision for the role of the court in the community, and it's one of the things that Marty mentioned. Thank you very much for bringing that up. We have a drug epidemic that's sweeping our nation. It's robbing our young people and stealing our productive workers from our workforce. And for the past 7 months, I've crisscrossed Knox County, and I've talked to hundreds of people, and people over and over ask, what are you going to do about the drug problem? I've visited the school boards, the village councils, visited all the 22 townships. I've walked in all 3 parades and talked to people on the sides of the parades, and many, many people ask the same question. The role of the judge is to assure that all citizens are protected by the law, the rule of law, and I believe we must hold the offenders accountable and assure the safety of the public. But I also believe that we need to involve our local service organizations. We need to empower our people to get involved in these local service organizations and support them, and to find ways to get people who are not the violent offenders. And the drug court is a very good example. The Mount Vernon News reported yesterday that the Ohio Supreme Court has certified the new drug court program in municipal court. Judge Thatcher has worked very hard to get that done. I'll watch how this program operates with a view toward implementing one as a felony drug court in the Court of Common Pleas. Other counties have veterans courts, mental health courts, and inmate reentry programs. There are models around the state to look at for Knox County Common Pleas Court. Knox Page has reported last week about a substance abuse town hall meeting on April 26th at the Mount Vernon Public Library, which is described as a call to action. That's what's motivating me to run for judge. I'm answering a call to action, and I've heard from the people, and that's what I plan to do, is to try to involve the local service organizations in more integrally with the court in the sentencing programs.
Thank you. Any rebuttals?
Yeah, I haven't been in parades, but I have been on the Head Start board for a long time, and we deal with drug issues with those families on a daily basis. I've also handled a lot of drug cases in Common Pleas Court. I've also talked to people because I've lived here for the last 17 years. I've been here. I've seen the issues. What's remarkable is that you can say, and conservatively, 80% of the felonies that happen in Knox County, 80% have some drug relation. Our community has to gather together. We have to fight this. The call to action mentioned about Knox Page is a nice first step, but we have a concrete plan. We have a drug court. We have the way we need to empower our probation officers. We have to get information to the judge. It's no longer time to think about it. We need action. We have to take steps. I've been on the Head Start board. I've seen how drugs destroy families and destroy children in this community. We have to act. We have the ability to do it. Judge Thatcher's drug court is a fantastic first step there.
Anything else? Mr. Wetzel?
And Judge Thatcher's drug court is in municipal court, so the Common Pleas Court would have to have either some collaboration with Judge Thatcher or have its own drug court, so that would be required. But I think the first step is to watch how it works and see what the Common Pleas Court can do in that regard. But there are other organizations that are already at work in the community: Touch Point, Relationships Under Construction, the Escape Zone, the Veteran Services Office, and our church's Ariel Foundation, Freedom Center, United Way. All these organizations are already at work, And what I want to do if I'm elected judge is to empower the people to support those organizations so that we can collaborate with them.
There is an administrative side to being a judge. What is the biggest issue or problem administratively for Knox County courts? How do you plan to fix it? And what are your qualifications in the administrative? And we'll start with Mr. Wetzel.
Well, our common pleas court functions very well. There are three things that make a good judge: experience in the law and in the courts, vision for the role of the court in the community, and judicial temperament. I've already talked about my experience over 33 years in front of many, many judges around the state, at the state and federal level. The judicial temperament requires open mind, fair, impartial, free from influence. All persons coming before the court are treated with deference and respect without regard for their status or who their lawyer is. Good judges don't hold grudges. They hold people accountable with firmness. And the administration of the court, we have a domestic relations division. We have a very good magistrate. The common pleas judge reviews the decisions of the magistrate and approves them. The court works very well with the clerk of courts. I think our clerk of courts administration is very good. We're going to be facing increase the need to implement new technology in the court. We may see electronic filing come in the future. We may see technology in the courtroom. I think if we implement electronic filing, one of the things we have to do is to continue to assure fair access to the court by the public, people who are not able to file electronically, so that's going to be an important thing. The role of the collaboration and cooperation between the court and the jail administration with respect to jail population and that kind of thing, that's going to be important. So I'm ready right now.
Mr. Alden.
The question was, what would we do to...
Question pertaining to administrative roles of the court. What qualifies you? And
Okay.
in Knox County, is there anything wrong with the courts, and how would you fix it?
Sure. So we have a fantastic common pleas court judge. Judge Eister's done a fantastic job. He has a good system in place. The things that we have to do is modernize. We have to increase access to common pleas court. That's both through electronic filing, but also not using that as a barrier. They have electronic filing in federal court, and it causes some significant barriers for pro se defendants or plaintiffs to be able to file within that court. So we need electronic filing, but we also need to make sure we have access to everyone to be able to use the court in an efficient way as possible. We also have to have a good relationship between the common pleas court and the commissioners. They handle the budget. The common pleas court is always desperate for resources because we have such a huge drug problem. So being collaborative and working together with the commissioners to make sure that the budget is set such that things can get done that need to be done. Also empowering the probation officers. We've got 3 probation officers, Josh, Adam, and Lisa. They all do a very nice job. I worked with all of them for a number of years. The question will always be, do we need more? Do they have the time and resources to get done what they need to get done? The judge often lives kind of like a mushroom, kind of kept in the dark and fed whatever they get fed to fertilize them. So the key is the probation officers are the ones that provide that information. That's the information that the judge can trust. So we need to have excellent probation officers that are empowered to get the information that we need to the judge. So administratively, I think it's a lot of it's about working with the clerk for electronic filing and working with the commissioners to make sure the resources are there to do what we need to do, because we have a massive drug issue, and we're going to hear that all night, no question.
Rebuttal, Mr. Wetzel.
Another point is with respect to the issue of pre-sentence investigations. And earlier, the previous panel was asked a question about sentencing laws and what the legislature is doing. The Ohio Sentencing Commission is currently reviewing the sentencing rules, and they're updating them like they do about every 20 years. So administratively, we're going to see changes that come in the law and in the from the legislature, and we're going to have to adapt to those. And so, you know, we'll have to be aware and stay on top of that.
Rebuttal, Mr. Alden.
Pre-sentence investigations is the information I was speaking of. When probation officers give information to the judge, it's through their pre-sentence investigation, which is a formal report that goes from the probation officers to the judge. So that's what the pre-sentence investigation is. We have to have the information necessary to make good decisions. And what they're looking at the state level is eliminating pre-sentence investigations for 4th and 5th degree felonies, not making it mandatory. That's frightening. We need the information. If we make that non-mandatory, that's their way of saying, this is how we're going to cut your budget. We have to have the resources to get the information to the judge so the judge has the flexibility and the ability to make good decisions with each individual. That's why we're special in Knox County, why we're not Columbus. We're not an assembly line criminal cases. We treat every one of them individually.
The magistrate plays a critical role in the civil docket. How do you see that role under your leadership, and what qualifications will you look for in selecting a magistrate? Mr. Alden.
We've got a good magistrate. She handles the divorces and dissolutions right now. She also works somewhat and does some legal research for Judge Eister, just like the prior magistrate did. The key for a good magistrate is to have someone that's very, very bright. They need to be the smartest person in the room, and I think we have that, and that's exciting. So the key for with domestic is that it's an ever-changing, malleable world. You have to have someone that's very devoted to understanding what the law is at a particular time for those divorces and dissolutions. So we have a magistrate. Historically in Knox County, our magistrate has been focused almost entirely on the divorces and dissolutions. I would certainly continue that because you have to have the expertise there, and because it evolves and changes so much, you need to have someone that's very focused on that. But I also foresee that person being able to help with the mega briefs that you sometimes get, to parse some research. That is critically important, to have another set of eyeballs to look at things, because one thing that's a problem with judges, like I said, is they can be mushrooms. So they have to have people around them that they trust, that they can bounce ideas off of, and that's certainly an important aspect for a magistrate as well.
Thank you. Mr. Wetzel.
I plan to keep the entire court staff as it is. Our magistrate's very good. The fact that we have a female magistrate in domestic court, I think, is an advantage. There are a lot of issues that I think come up in domestic cases that I think a woman on the bench is an advantage, especially if the common pleas judge is a man. You get that balance that I think you need in domestic cases. Mallory is the magistrate, and she has about 6 years of experience in domestic relations work, so that's pretty much all that she did. The rest of the court staff, I think, is excellent, and I've met all of them and talked to them, and I don't see any need to change anything there. So looking for something else or somebody else, I don't think is necessary. I've done a lot of my own research over the years, and as necessary to ask the magistrate to help, that's a good resource. It's there, but I'm a pretty good researcher myself, and I think that that's the way it should be run.
Thank you. Mr. Alden, any response?
Yeah, I don't care if the magistrate's a man or a woman. I want them to be good. I think that's critically important. And we do have a good one. I think Mallory does do a very nice job. We do have an outstanding staff. So I'm excited. I think Judge Eister's put together a very good group there. I think things can continue on very well. I've done a lot of research in my time, too. I've been the lead litigator at Zelkwitz, Berry & Color since I started there in 2000. Handled all sorts of cases here in Knox County. But I can tell you it is always good to have someone that you trust to bounce things off of, and I think that's certainly how I would use a magistrate.
I want to ask one quick follow-up question. Mr. Wetzel mentioned that he's willing to keep Judge Eister's staff. Mr. Alden, how do you feel about that? Do you have other people in mind, or?
No, absolutely. That's been clear from the beginning that they would stay. Whoever becomes next common pleas court judge is going to have to learn an awful lot of things when they get there. they don't want to learn those people's jobs too instantly. So those people are going to be there. They're fantastic people. I've worked with these folks for 15 years, many of them for 15 years. They're good folks. I know them. They know me. I have a very good feel about all those folks, no question.
Thank you.
It's been estimated that it will take 1 year, 12 months, for the defendant accused in the murder of a Danville police officer to be tried, to reach trial. Is this the same type of timetable for such cases that would continue if you are elected to the bench? Mr. Wetzel.
Well, in some counties, they have a trial schedule that they give you at the time that you file the case, and so you know the trial date. And the Supreme Court, the Ohio Supreme Court, is constantly checking on how the dockets are moving through the counties, and if the dockets are too slow, you get dinged. The judge, gets a letter, and they get told they have to speed it up. The case that you're referring to is a very serious case arising out of a tragedy here in Knox County. That's an extraordinary case. I'll be ready to take on that case if that case is still pending at the time that if I'm elected, that I'm sworn in. As for other cases, I would like to be able to establish a court schedule so that at the beginning of the filing of the case, the parties and the lawyers are given a schedule that at certain times there's going to be a pretrial, and there's going to be a final pretrial and a trial date, and they've got discovery cut off, and they're going to, there's a schedule that they have to follow. Now, in order to change that schedule, there have to be some extraordinary circumstances, and they have to go to the court and ask the court for an extension, and that happens. So that would be the way I would expect to administer the court. Criminal rules have, speedy trial rights that are involved unless they're waived by the defendant. So all of those timing and scheduling things would be something that is well run here at the court, and if there's anything necessary to tweak it, then I'd be willing to do that.
Mr. Alden.
Sure, and Rick did a very nice job of describing civil cases and how they're laid out. Criminal cases are fundamentally different. You're certainly given a trial date right when you do your arraignment. A criminal case has a very specific procedure it goes through, which is different than a civil case. Civil cases do last an awful long time, but a lot of that's because the lawyers need that time to be able to evaluate the case and develop those cases. What the court needs to be is a good place for lawyers to practice. So it needs to be expedient, because that's how you protect clients' rights. You've heard before, I'm sure, justice delayed is justice denied. It would certainly be my goal to make sure we do not delay justice. That's critically important. So when we're setting out criminal cases, yes, we have to keep them moving along. There's no doubt about that. On the other hand, if we think that it's going to impinge on the defendant or the state's rights by rushing a trial, we need to make sure that we've given them the opportunity to do what they need to do, especially the defendant. Remember that the Common Pleas Court is the last bastion of protection for the Constitution, and you are innocent until proven guilty. So the Constitution is critically important to all of us, and the judge is the one that protects that. So there is a speedy trial right, and that's inherent with every single criminal case, but we also have to make sure that we're protecting the rights of the defendant and of the state. Often with a case that you mentioned, and that's not a case I would be able to be involved in because I represent the village of Danville. I knew Tom. It's a horrific, horrific situation. But that's the kind of case. Those capital cases take a long time. That is the expense of justice sometimes. It is a very specific choice that our prosecutor made. I admire the choice. I think that's the process we need to go through, but it can be time consuming.
If I may follow up, one of our county commissioners voiced a concern that a trial about this particular case that you're talking about could cost the county $1 million when it's all said and done. Is that the kind of money, is that amount of money available? Is there a budget for these kinds of cases? Because we have a double murder trial coming up soon as well.
When it is a capital case, that's the kind of money that it takes for capital cases. They're extraordinarily expensive. Do we have the money? That's probably a better question to ask our county commissioners. it's going to be very difficult. The state's going to have to help. The state public defenders tend to come in and help with expertise so that we don't have to rely completely on our public defender's office. But the public defender's office will be paid more to handle those cases. It is an expensive, expensive process. It has very little to do with the common pleas court judge and much more to do with the system and the choices that the prosecutor and the defense make in determining how they're going to proceed with the case. The judge is there to act as a referee on that. The judge is not going to have any effect on whether it's a more or less costly case.
Mr. Wetzel, any rebuttal or comment?
The Code of Judicial Conduct prohibits a judicial candidate from commenting on any pending case in any court, anywhere. I'm not going to say any more about any cases that are pending here.
Okay, thank you.
Let's talk about the law specific. In a capital type case or civil case, how do you read the law? Seems very simple answer, but how do you process it to give voters a better understanding of your mind process? And let's start with Mr. Alden.
Sure. You read the law by reading the law. We spend an awful lot of time in school learning how to read statutes and read the law. The law says what the law says. You don't create new vagaries and gray areas that don't exist. You look at the law and you apply the facts to the law and you move forward. It's relatively straightforward. We have a lot of case law out there, and the Supreme Court certainly spends an awful lot of time talking about the gray areas. The gray areas don't last at the common pleas court very long. You make a decision, and this goes back to justice delayed is justice denied. You make a decision and you move on. They have appellate rights. The big questions, legal questions that you're referring to about interpretations of the law go to the appellate court and Supreme Court very quickly. So the key for a common pleas court is to make sure you've read it. You don't try to create something that's not there. You have to be neutral as to who the parties are, neutral as to what effect it might have. Focus on what the law is and let the appellate court and the Supreme Court make those determinations.
Mr. Wetzel?
Well, the role of the judge is to assure that all citizens are protected by the rule of law and that they are protected fairly and impartially on the basis of the facts and the law of each case, without regard to their status or their income or their identity or anything like that. Who their lawyer is should not have any bearing on any of it. The law is applied based upon the facts of each case. So, are you referring to a specific case in the court, or are you just asking generally about how the law is applied?
Generally, how you read the law anytime a case comes before you. How do you read it in a way and explain in a way that our voters, or as voters, we would know what your mind process is when something comes before you?
So you're trying to figure out how I would rule on a particular case. That's what you're trying to get me to say, right?
Not at all.
Okay. All right, because we're not allowed to do that.
Not at all.
Okay,
No, this
all
is any case that would come before you, just a general process of what you would go through in order to.
Well, if you take the witnesses and their testimony, you take the evidence. If there's an expert, you take the expert's evidence. If there's scientific or forensic evidence, you include that. You read the law on what part of the evidence is admissible and what part cannot be admitted. You allow the jury to do the job that the jury is supposed to do. And when you have specific cases where there are technical aspects, you hope that there's an expert involved that will testify, and you use case law as precedent. You try to avoid, when you are imposing a sentence, for example, that your sentence is going to be appealed, but that happens. You have to be very careful about the record that is made in the courtroom. I like court reporters that are sitting there that are taking testimony on the records, because if they can ask a witness to repeat if they can't hear it and that kind of thing.
Rebuttal, Mr. Alden?
No, I don't think it is necessary. Thanks.
Any more comments, Mr. Wetzel? Regarding that?
Regarding that, well, you know, I like having a court reporter, as I was saying, a live court reporter, because that person can tell the witness, I didn't hear what you said, or could you repeat that? They can say the same thing to counsel. Some courtrooms around the state will use a recording, and then if you want the record, you have to get it transcribed, and you get a record that has a lot of places in it that say inaudible because they couldn't hear what the witness said or the lawyer said. So, you know, running a trial and then taking the evidence and applying the law to the facts and the evidence of each case, that's the way you do it.
Both of your campaigns have addressed how long you have lived in Knox County and your community involvement. The role of the judge is to apply the law to the cases presented, whether criminal or civil. Can you please explain how residency and community service are relevant to performing the duties of a judge? I've lost track, I'm sorry. Mr. Alden.
Sure. We do things differently than we do in Columbus. I practiced in Columbus. I practiced all over the state as well. We do things differently here in Knox County. There is actually a wide amount of latitude in sentencing for state courts. We treat each case individually. We have our own set of values. I've been heavily involved in our community. I've been on the Head Start Board, Hospice Board, started a Danville Academic Foundation. We've been practicing here in front of these courts and our judges for the last 16 years. We don't do things like they do in common pleas in Franklin County. I tried a case in Franklin County. It was a felony case, and literally, there's a prosecutor standing at a lectern, has a pile of cases. These are felony cases. This is the most important cases that go before the court. He has a pile of 20 cases. There are 20 lawyers in line waiting to take turns to talk to that prosecutor. 5 minutes is what you have, and they all cut deals. That's not how we do things here. We have our own set of values. We know our neighbors. We understand what's going on in our community. We see the drug problem that's coming here. We understand we need to stop recidivism. We tailor-make our sentences. We empower both our police officers and our probation officers to deal with those situations. We have community policing in this county that we don't have very many other places. Centerburg's got a sheriff's deputy that's focused on Centerburg, another one that's focused on Gambier. We have a Danville Police Department, a Fredericktown Police Department. We don't do things like they do in Columbus. We don't do things like they do in the big cities. So understanding the values that we have and understanding we're going to hold people accountable for their actions, we're not going to slap wrists, we're going to hold people accountable, is awfully important about what we do and how we do it.
Thank you. Mr. Wetzel.
Well, I've worked in Knox County for 15 years, and I've got a lot of friends here, and I've represented a lot of people in the community, volunteered in many different organizations. I'm on the Liberty Township Zoning Commission since Diana and I moved here in 2013. I'm on the Liberty Township Zoning Commission. I've been on the Republican Central Committee. We volunteered with Brush with Kindness and at the Salvation Army and outreach programs in our local church. A lot of the people that live in Knox County work outside of Knox County, and a lot of people that work in Knox County live outside of Knox County. The same laws apply throughout the state in every single county in the state. The same court rules apply in every single county in the state. Knox County is not unique in regard to how the law applies or how it is applied. All court proceedings are open to the public. There's no secrecy here. It sounds a little like, Mr. Alden, I don't think you are implying that there's a good old boys network here, that you have to hire the right lawyer to get justice. I don't think that's what you're getting at. But the Knox County Common Pleas Court has a reputation for affording every person who comes before the court with fair and impartial treatment, without prejudice or regard to status or background, and without regard to who their lawyer is. This is the way it should be, and this is the way it will continue if I'm elected judge.
Mr. Alden, any rebuttal?
Absolutely. We are unique. We are a very tight-knit community. This whole concept of a good old boys network is fascinating. Judge Eister certainly isn't going to approve of any kind of good old boys network. That doesn't exist in this county. We have a very good system that we've got in place here that protects our community. Can it be tweaked? Can it be improved? Absolutely. But we do things differently here because of our values. We have a very strong set of values. We look out for each other. I saw that firsthand when my wife was in the accident. We look out for each other, and that is different than any place I've lived. My dad was military. We bounced around all over the place until I moved here. This is a unique and wonderful place, no question.
Mr. Wetzel.
Well, one of the reasons why Diana and I moved here is because we started in a small town. This is very much like the small town where I come from and where Diana comes from. We feel that this is, I mean, we have lived in communities where it is close-knit as well. That's why we feel at home here. This is a very good community. It is close-knit. But we feel at home here because we have lived in communities like this before. The court, I just have to reiterate that the court proceedings are open to the public, and we have to follow the same law that every other court in the state follows. So the uniqueness, I think, is an affinity that we feel for the people, but the court itself is like every other court in the state.
As judge, you'll be charged with sentencing, as you've mentioned, and of course we all know that, those convicted in your court. In light of prison overcrowding here in Ohio, do you take that into consideration when sentencing defendants or not? And Mr. Wetzel first.
Well, there are sentencing guidelines that courts follow, you know, depending upon the type of crime and whether there was violence and the harm to the victim and those kinds of things. So there are some rules that apply in the sentencing. We also mentioned the pre-sentence investigation. I think a pre-sentence investigation is essential in every case. They are expensive, but I believe that that's something that the court has to know. You need a broader base of research on the defendant before you sentence the defendant, so that you know what else have they done in other jurisdictions. I also think it's very important to work with the jail administrator on how is the jail population, what is the population there, what's the capacity. We have these cases that are coming down the pike that are scheduled for trial, and so that we can anticipate what kind of sentence can be imposed or should be imposed on a defendant. So it's going to take I think the court has to be a part of providing good government to the people in Knox County, and that means that the court has to work with the county commissioners and all the other elected officials and the sheriff and the jail administrator and the local police departments in administering justice in Knox County in the most efficient and effective way.
Mr. Alden?
Sure. People have to be held accountable. That's kind of the bottom line, what the judge does. The judge has to look at the defendant and figure out, how do I make this person accountable? Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, how do we keep that person from showing back up? So recidivism is huge. We have to have research, we have to have statistics, we have to track what works and what doesn't work. Absolutely, overcrowding is an incredibly difficult problem that we have. We have a drug problem that's infiltrating into our community. So one idea that I would implement is shock incarceration. That can happen in Knox County. It's happened with clients of mine where you have to send that person somewhere for a while. They have to get cleaned out. They have to become amenable to rehabilitation, and then you find them a place to go so that they can get rehabilitated. Once again, that's where the drug court can help a lot in terms of our overcrowding problems. This is a huge budgetary issue, there's no doubt. The county commissioners have their hands full in dealing with this, and we have to be good and work with the county commissioners to figure out what's possible and what's not. But everyone agrees that people have to be held accountable and they have to become amenable. You've heard the old saying that someone has to be ready, they have to hit bottom before they are susceptible and amenable to rehabilitation. Well, I can tell you, the common police court judge can make someone hit bottom faster than anybody else can. That's one of the powers that they have, and it has to be used like that. They have to be ready, and then they need to get into rehab, and then there has to be follow-up. But all of those things are expensive, and that's why the drug court, which there are many other counties that work common police court and municipal court in conjunction on their drug court, and that would certainly be my intention. It's a conversation I had with Judge Thaster. I think that would help us with the resource problem that we have.
Mr. Wetzel, any rebuttal?
Well, collaborating with Judge Thatcher on the drug court would be an efficient way to do it. There would have to be some things that would have to be worked out in that regard, an agreement, sharing costs and so forth. People have to be held accountable. That's certainly true. But we have a lot of really good organizations in Knox County that are available to help people get back on track. The one question that you face is, after you hold them accountable and they serve the penalty for their crime, then what? And Mr. Alden mentioned recidivism, which is the repeat offender that keeps repeating the crime. So getting these local organizations involved and helping people get back on the right track is really what we need to do. It's a systemic issue, and we need to have a systemic approach to solving the problems.
Children often get left in the wake. Their parents make decisions. They end up in your court. How do you best think you can help the children, or maybe that is not your role as judge? Let's start with Mr. Wetzel. Okay.
I mentioned that the drug epidemic that we have that's sweeping the nation, it is not limited to just the drug user. It includes the circle of people around that person, and that includes children. It also includes extended family members. If the grandparents have to take care of the children because their son, the father, can't care for them, or their daughter, the mother, can't care for them, it's a systemic issue. We have a breakdown in our whole nation that is causing this opening for the drug epidemic. So we've got to get our community organizations like Touchpoint, for example, or the Escape Zone, reaching out to families, providing counseling, providing assistance, providing tutoring and mentoring, and assistance with GED, and all of those things that are already going on in our community. We've got to get those people that are affected by the people that come before the court, get the people around them plugged into these organizations in the community for help. And children certainly are going to be a big part of that. I'm very protective of victims of crime. I'm very protective of victims of domestic violence. And I'm very protective of children who are victims or who are collaterally affected by whatever cases are coming before the court. And that's a big part of my passion for helping the community heal.
Mr. Alden?
Hey, I'm not sure if you were asking about divorce and disillusions and how.
No, not
okay.
specifically, but children are often left in the wake of whatever crime it might be, or
Okay.
drugs. It could be anything. Do you feel that it's the judge's role, and what would make you different from your opponent in that regard?
Sure. My extensive experience working with kids, I think, for one thing, makes me a little bit different. I've been on the Head Start board now for 15 years. I understand when the family breaks down how it affects kids. As part of the factors in determining whether a kid is eligible for Head Start, it's the incarceration of a parent that boosts them up. So we try to bring those kids in to help them. So Rick's right. The community has to step up, has to be involved with the caring and nurturing of these kids, because the family structure breaks down, especially when we get drugs involved. And like I said, 80%, and that's a conservative estimate, of all the felonies that happen in common police court have some kind of drug affiliation. So it all comes back down to drugs. It really does. That's what's destroying our family structure. It breeds on itself. So the drug court, once again, becomes an important factor, because you've pooled all of these resources You've pooled these resources that the community has and focused in one place. Instead of all of them doing bits and pieces here and there without any purpose, we have them all in one place. And it becomes a force multiplier, to use a military term, where we can really maximize how we're going to help with those kids. It's critically important that we have the collaboration, and the judge can set that up through both a veterans court, which is critically important in our county. I've represented numerous veterans that have been in trouble. My brother's a psychiatrist in a vet hospital in Iowa City. It's something I'm very passionate about. That allows the resources to be focused. The drug court allows the resources to be focused. I've coached mock trial at Danville for the last 15 years. I'm passionate about kids. I want them to do well. I want them to excel. There's been conversation about the probate juvenile court actually having a mock trial team, a community mock trial team, to take some of these at-risk kids and give them things to do. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'm excited to help with that any way I can.
Rebuttal, Mr. Wetzel?
Well, I think we've mentioned some of the local organizations that are providing assistance to our at-risk population. For children, there's the Escape Zone, which is a terrific program. They are only open about, I think, 1 day a week. Expanding their ability to be open more often so that more children would have more access to it would be a good way to give kids something else, the children at risk, to be able to be involved in that program, as an example. Other counties have done some of these things. We can look to them for what works and what doesn't, and how to adapt it for Knox County.
Mr. Alden?
We have the programs in place here. The Escape Zone is one. It does one piece. It does some after-school stuff. It does some Friday night stuff where it brings those kids in, and it does some tutoring. It's a neat program. There's no question. But once again, it's focusing those resources, finding the kids. As a condition of probation, judges have an awful lot of power to also help kids at the same time. We have to understand when we're sentencing someone and we make them lose their job, that we're not only making them lose their job, we're making their child, lose their ability to eat. So all of those things have to be taken into account when we're dealing with criminals or whatever situation happens to be before us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that fantastic dialogue between the two of you this evening. And we need to move on to our closing statements. Mr. Wetzel, you can start. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for, these have been really good questions, and challenging, I would say, too, but very thoughtful, and I think they're, getting to the heart of the matter and helping to inform the voters. I'm going to come back to the 3 points that make a good judge. Experience in the law and in the courts, and good lawyering. Under the rules, to be a common pleas judge, you only need 6 years experience. So both of us have that much experience. I have 33 years of experience in many different courts around the state and representing people from all walks of life. I taught English as a second language for 7 years, so I've got a lot of exposure to people from different cultures and people from different walks of life. Another thing it takes to be a good judge is a vision for the role of the court in the community. And as I described, my vision for the role of the court is to involve and empower the local organizations that are providing assistance to our at-risk population. Judicial temperament is very key. Judicial temperament is personality. It is how you communicate with people. It's how you deal with people. Deference and respect for people. Fairness, impartiality, open mind. That's judicial temperament, and that's very critical in what it takes to be a good judge. As a judicial candidate, I recognize that there's a case pending in our common pleas court arising from, a tragedy, a local tragedy, and I'm ready and prepared to handle that case if necessary. Over the past 15 years, I've served people in Knox County as a lawyer and as a volunteer in local organizations, and I've got a vision for the role of the court, and I'm answering a call to action.
Thank you. Mr. Alden.
I also would like to thank you all for being here. It's awfully important that we have an educated electorate, and sometimes the judicial races don't get the focus that they deserve. I have a Facebook page if anyone wants any details about my experience and my beliefs. There's some videos on there as well, and check that out if you wish. I've been here handling the things in the Common Pleas Court. I've handled about 500 cases in Knox County Common Pleas Court. I've handled every single kind of case that you can have there. I've handled divorces, dissolutions, civil stalking, protective orders, felonies, over 50 felonies here in Knox County. Big civil cases, med mal cases. There's nothing in the Common Pleas Court that I haven't handled. I've also had the luxury of going into other counties and seeing how they do things. I've practiced in front of Judge Frost. I've practiced in front of the judges in the surrounding counties here, so I understand how the process works. I've also seen that every court does do things a little bit differently. We have our way of doing things because it's part of our values. It's because we look out for each other. The Common Pleas Court exemplifies that. He has to protect that. He or she has to protect that. It's critically important that the judge understands the values of the community for the court to be successful, because the court has to have the respect of the community. I was fortunate enough to be hired by Jim Cullors at Zelkwitz Berry & Cullors, a man that embodied professionalism. He kind of taught me two things when he hired me on. One was, I built up a pretty good reputation, he said. I've been a lawyer for about 40 years. What you have to remember is that you can destroy it in 5 minutes. And the second thing was, every time you meet somebody, every time you see them, that's the most important thing going on in their lives. And you have to treat it like that. That's what I would take to the Common Pleas Court. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.